Hey guys, BlackCross here, and welcome to another video review. And this is going to be that one review where somebody is going to absolutely despise it. I mean, I've had several videos where it's like someone's gonna hate this or something like that. No, this is gonna be that video, regardless of which fandom you're in, whether you're a Shin Megami Tensei fan or if you're a Persona fan. Either way, you're probably gonna hate this video. Because today's video is going to be talking about Persona 5. To be more precise, so Persona 5 Royal. Now, I can't remember what all is like different from Royal versus the vanilla version. But if you want a good analysis of what's the difference between the original and the Royal version, there's this YouTuber by the name of Nyarly. And I'll be sure to put in the link in the description below. Check out that video, because he does an in-depth video description of like what all is in Royal. And literally everybody that I've talked to, whether it's people in my life or YouTube or reviews, they always say play Royal. You know, even if you've never played the original, just play Royal because it is a better version. And literally right off the bat, just from playing the game, I can tell that it is a better game, especially from what people have stated. And thinking back to it, it's like, would I go back and play the original? You know, like, that's the question that you would ask yourself, is that, would I go back and play the original? You know, because when you think about it like in my perspective, you know, where you're a trophy collector and stuff like that. And it's like, would I actively go back to complete Persona 5, the vanilla version? Would I do that? And I think, based on what all is different from the original to the Royal, I would say that that would be actually harder to do because of how drastically different the combat is. In fact, I would say that I love Royal better because of how the combat is. But again, if you had to ask me, I would definitely recommend playing the Royal rather than play the original one. I know some people may be indifferent about this and stuff like that, but definitely if you had a choice and you hadn't played one or the other, play the Royal first, because chances are those differences between the original and Royal are going to matter. And especially as I was playing through the game, because I was actually enjoying some of those added features better. And I thought to myself, I was like, in all honesty, if that was taken away from me, I wouldn't like it as much. If that was taken away from me, I wouldn't like it as much either. So I mean, again, it adds on. Now let's go on to the actual review of Persona 5 by itself, you know, Persona 5, you know, as a whole. The only Persona game that I've played was Persona 3. And I know some people might argue and say that it's not as great as 5, or some might even argue and say that it's better than 5. I've played Persona 3. I haven't beaten it, okay? Whenever I last played it, I was fighting against the final boss, Nyx. Spoiler alert for those that haven't played Persona 3. But I basically fought against him, and I was having a hell of a time trying to beat him. One of the main reasons was probably because of the fact that I was so low level. And at the second point was that I probably didn't have a very good set of personas with me at the time. So that might have been the other issue there. But with that being said, the question that I have to ask myself is that, do I like Persona 5 better, or is it somewhat okay compared to Persona 3? I would argue and say that I actually like it better in Persona 5. There are some areas that I like it better. For example, graphically, it looks appealing. I know whenever I first saw Persona 5 being teased and stuff like that, when I finally saw it being revealed and stuff like that, I was like, why are they using the Catherine engine? Like, that was the one thing that was throwing me off, was that, why did they choose the Catherine engine? Because it literally looks like something that came off of Catherine. And I now know why. Because it is appealing. It is very appealing in terms of anime-style gameplay. Like, that's the same to say. It is very much anime in the fact of how the graphic looks in the game, you know? It matches with the animation that they have, it matches with the characters and everything like that, and it looks really, really good, in my personal opinion, and it really, really stands out to me. Another thing, too, that I really like out of Persona 5, and this may come as a shock to some of you, but awkwardly enough, I actually like the contrast and the graphicking in Persona 5 better than I do with Shin Megami Tensei 5. Now, a lot of people will argue and say, oh, well, Shin Megami Tensei 5 was on the Nintendo Switch, so of course it's going to look ugly and stuff like that. The rendering is hideous. But even after rendering, you know, when you finally get to see the full-on detail of the demons, the characters and stuff like that, Persona 5 looks so much nicer. Like, I kid you not, you can do a side-by-side comparison of two identical demons, okay? The same demon. You can look at both of them, and I can probably guarantee you the majority of you would like Persona 5 graphic tone better than, say, Shin Megami Tensei 5's graphic tone. Yes, in terms of how the detailing is, it looks very nice, it's very realistic, but yet the contrast, the color textures and everything within Persona 5 basically increases it. It looks so much nicer, it looks so much sharper, and keep in mind, I don't have a 4K television, okay? I have a basic 1080p television, I have a basic PS4, mind you, original first model, and that's it. I don't have any advancements to improve the picture and stuff. And yet, for some reason, for some odd reason, the detailing and the contrast, the picture of the demons and stuff, looks so much better, so much nicer than Shin Megami Tensei 5 did. And I thought that was weird, because I was thinking to myself, am I just over-analyzing this? Or are the demons actually better looking than in SMT 5? And again, it's not a fair argument nor a fair fight, because we are talking about the Nintendo Switch's power, but at the same time, even after it's rendered and stuff like that, could the demons look as good as Persona 5's demons? Could they look better? You know, are they better? You know, is there a drastic difference? Is one better than the other, or are they both evenly in terms of style? Or is the other one better, you know? Again, do you prefer the cartoonish style look, or do you prefer the realism look, you know? Because they both arguably look the same almost, except one is more contrast and more cartoonish style versus realism look, you know? Like, there's fur textures, feather textures, muscles and stuff like that, versus how the shading, the color shading and all that stuff. So again, there is that contrast difference, and I was thinking about it and I was like, am I just overthinking it, or is Persona 5 better looking than SMT 5, you know? Like, that's weird, okay? To me, I feel like that's a weird argument to get into. But of course, then again, keep in mind, we're talking SMT versus Persona. And that's another thing that should be talked about, okay? Before Persona 5, every other Persona game was called Shin Megami Tensei Persona, you know? Shin Megami Tensei Persona 3, Shin Megami Tensei Persona 4. Persona 5 was whenever they dropped Shin Megami Tensei, and it just became Persona. Like, I started to notice that, and I was like, that is odd. That is odd, isn't it? Like, I'm not saying that that's bad. In fact, that could be good, because Persona 5 especially, has now become a staple to where it can stand up on its own platform. Some may argue differently, and the same way can be said for Persona 5 and stuff like that, because it does feature the Shin Megami Tensei demons and stuff. But at the same time, just by itself, you know, it stands up differently. In fact, whenever Shin Megami Tensei 5 came out, we did have that little argument that was only in the Persona franchise, that was never in Shin Megami Tensei series. So it was like, why are we having this argument? With that, what do I think about the story? I actually was really, like, glued in to the story, okay? I was just zoned into the story. Shin Megami Tensei 5 story was kind of like, you know, it's kind of hard to explain it, because there were even some points where I was like, that could have been done a little bit better, because like I said in that review, which I recommend checking that review first before checking into this one, I thought that the beginning parts of the story were okay, but then when it started to introduce to the other demon gods and stuff like that, that's where I got interested, because it was a different scenario, and I was just glued into it, you know. This one had me glued in from the very beginning, like literally from the very beginning. And I think what it is based on the topic itself, okay? It's based on the topic. So the main character gets into a situation where he was trying to help somebody, but by helping that somebody, he ends up being pulled into this whole argument. And so by pushing this guy away, he injures himself. And so he basically sues the guy. And basically now the whole world thinks of him as like a delinquent, some kind of gangster mob or something like that. And it's like, all of a sudden, you're at rock bottom. You are on rock bottom right here. Like, you have nothing. You are just at the bottom. And I think that's an interesting way to start the story. You know, I think that's an interesting way. Unlike in most cases where you have a character, you know, you have a tragic story, this one is a very related situation where you do something, you know, you do something that you think is right, but then all of a sudden the whole world is against you. Okay, just because you do something nice, or you do something that you feel like you need to do, all of a sudden the whole world turns against you, you know? You're all of a sudden blacklisted, you're all of a sudden a bad person or something like that. This was an interesting story. Like, I kid you not, I was just like, it was just right then and there, you knew what was going on, you knew what was happening, and you fell for this guy. Not only that, but he ends up being entangled with other people who's also had troubles and problems as well. And I really like that. I really like that. Every character had their own unique story that coincides along with the main character in some form of way. And I really, really like that. It's hard to say which one is my favorite character aside from, like, the main character. I do like Yusuke. Yusuke is a unique character to me. He's a very unique character because of his art style. He's very artistic, but he doesn't quite fully understand the emotion that goes on with everything and stuff. Like, he always feels like everything has like an emotional feel and attachment and stuff like that. And then by the time he makes this realization of what he thinks it is, all of a sudden it's just thrown right against him and being like, that's not exactly how it is. And then he's like, I don't quite understand. It's just, it was so unique in my personal opinion. Another thing too, of course, such as with all the main characters, you also have the different other characters that you can socialize with and stuff like that. In the Persona 3, they were social links. In this game, they are called confidants. And these confidants, these different people that you encounter and stuff like that, you get to interact with them and stuff. And they all have a unique story with them as well. It's hard to say which one I like better, because they're all really good. They're all really good. I feel like whenever you're playing a Persona game, the number one thing that you have to be careful of whenever you're making a Persona game is when you include other characters that are not main characters. You know, they are just side characters and stuff. You have to be careful what you do, because you're creating another sub-story to go along with the rest of the story, you know? And that takes a lot of talent. That takes a lot of hard work to pull that off. That's like Witcher 3 levels of storytelling, you know? Where it's like a side story and stuff like that. And you would think, oh, a side quest and everything like that, it doesn't really matter. Just do like a fetch quest or something. No. They go in deep with the side quests and stuff. In the same way with Persona 5. They go knee deep with the side characters. They go knee deep. They make them impactful. And I really like that. I really like whenever they make these side characters and they make them very crucial for the development of the character. They make it very crucial. I mean, yes, there are some side benefits whenever you're slowly completing their ranks and stuff like that. But the overall story really sets it well. And even more so towards the end of the game. When you're beating the game and stuff like that, these individual confidants are kind of like, they kind of gather together towards the end of the game. They gather together, you know? And I love that. I love the fact that you can just play the game, you know, you can enjoy the game for what it is. Or if you go that extra length, you get that extra layer of emotion built on top of it. But you know what's interesting? Now, I haven't checked the trophy listings for the vanilla version, but in Royal, there is no trophy for maxing every confidant. There's no trophy for that. I thought that was weird because if you're a Persona fan, okay, Persona fan. I am not a Persona fan. I like Persona, but I am not what you call a Persona fan. I have never maxed every confidant or social links, if you look back in 3. I have never actually maxed out all of the characters. Some people can do this with no problem. They have the best optimization could be imaginable. And keep in mind, my first time playthrough, I was trying to kind of maximize everything and stuff like that. And there were halfway through the game, I was kind of like, okay, well, how do I max out this faster? And as I was going on the internet looking up and stuff like that, I was like, oh, I messed up pretty badly. And if I had done this differently, I probably would have actually maxed out every confidant. I really could have. But in my first playthrough, with several screw-ups that I've had and stuff like that, and then trying to kind of perfect things along the way and stuff like that, all that was left was 2 characters that just need to be maxed out. One of them I started out late, which was Haru, mostly because I didn't know where she was at. And I had too many confidants, so I didn't need to take in a new confidant and get tangled up with everybody else's. So hers was kind of a little bit late. But then one other one was Kasumi. And mostly because of the fact that Kasumi is one of the new characters that gets introduced in Royal, of course. I'll explain her in a little bit, but first of all, I want to go ahead and just continue talking about the confidants. Those were the only 2 confidants that was left need to be maxed out. Every other one I've maxed out. The cool thing is there isn't a trophy stating you had to date everyone, nor befriend everyone, or stuff like that. All of that is just in-game. They're not trophies, they're just in-games. Achievements and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool. So in other words, if you're an exaggerate fan, you can go for those extra stuff that you wanted to do, you know? And even if you didn't have to, that wasn't part of the main trophy listings for Persona 5 Royal, which I thought was nice. I was like, okay, I can see this being totally possible to complete in one playthrough. Like, it can be done. It's not impossible. You just gotta know how to play the game, you just gotta know what needs to be done and stuff like that, and from then on out, it's not that bad. In fact, in terms of trophies that are left to complete in Persona 5 Royal, they're mostly just side stuff, you know, like being able to fish, or going to the maid cafe, crane game, stuff like that, because again, Persona 5 is a Sims game, you know, where you go through school life and stuff like that, and as you're progressing through the story, you're progressing through a life as that character and stuff. So, it's one of those things where I like the optimization, and if I had gone back and done things differently, I probably would have maxed every confidant with no problem. I probably could have. Now that I know what needs to be done versus what I should have done. You know, there's a difference. There's a difference between, oh, I should go for this because it raises mine a little bit. Where everybody else would be like, no, don't do that, do this. And it's like, why would I do, oh, I see. So if I do that, I'd be maxing out this in the process of it. So it's all time management. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you're not good with that, chances are you're not going to enjoy it as much. But if you are good with stuff like that, you're good with managing your time and stuff like that. And with this game, there's a lot of stuff that can be talked about. There's like a flippin' lot. I highly recommend you guys just look up like all the different ways to raise your confidants, all the different ways to raise your stats and stuff, because I couldn't cover them. I could not physically cover them, because there were some stuff that I did that I shouldn't have done, you know? There was some stuff that I did that even players who have mastered Persona 5 would be like, dude, you're an idiot, you know? And I admit that, but again, this was my first playthrough, so of course I didn't know that you shouldn't go to Galaxy Burger just to raise your guts. That's an improper way of doing it. Another way was like, you know, just wasting your time working out and stuff like that, trying to build up your HP. Of course, that's not the right way of doing it and stuff. And of course, I now know not to use the cheapest looking freaking fertilizer and instead try to go for the next best thing for raising your kindness and stuff. I get that now. But before, I knew nothing. So, of course, naturally, I did things wrong. But I still had fun regardless. So that's something to know, that it's still a fun game, regardless if you fuck up. And trust me whenever I say this, when you play Persona 5, if you've never played a Persona game, you're going to mess up somewhere along the way. There's nothing wrong with that, it's just a learning progress. Because at that point, by the time you get far enough, you go, okay, now I know what needs to be done right. And you can kind of redeem yourself. You won't max out everyone's confidants, admittedly, but it's not impossible. You will actually get through the game relatively well. And even if you don't max out, like, remotely half of them, you're still going to get some good stuff coming out of it. Okay, so let's talk about the royal portion of the game, okay? The royal portion. So, when I say royal portion, I'm getting tongue twist, that's not good. The royal portion of the game, there are 2 extra characters that are added to the confidant. I forgot how to actually pronounce his name. Miyaki, I believe. He's a counselor. He's a counselor for the school. He actually plays a bigger role towards the end of the game, and I won't spoil that part in case anyone asks, but he's a counselor. And you can max him out pretty easily. You just need to know that you have to max him out before November. Like, that's the only thing I can tell you, that you need to max his out before November, because if you don't, then you won't complete his confidant completely, I'm afraid. Sort of like the same way with Akechi, but again, that's another character entirely. The other confidant is Kasumi. Now, it wasn't until I started playing this game that I started to realize, okay, what's with this Kasumi girl? What's her story and stuff like that, you know? And it wasn't until I played it, it's like, oh, so this is Atlas shipping, okay? This isn't like another character that just gets added. No, Atlas wants you to fall in love with this girl. Okay, this is literally the ship girl that they have created for. And I'm like, wow. And like, you didn't think about it at first, but by the time you start kind of going through and seeing her more and more, that's whenever you start to realize she's a little bit clingy, isn't she? Like, she's clinging on to you relatively hard, okay? Like, super freaking hard. And I'm like, I don't know if I like that, you know? I just, by the time I got to the royal portion, though, I started to realize, I feel like a complete dickhole now. Again, I can't spoil much, because I feel like that the royal portion is sort of like the delivery to, like, everything else. Because it's like, you know, people talk about certain things and everything like that. I don't hear much about the royal portion. I just know that Kasumi is like a new character that is added in. I didn't know much of anything. And now that I've played through it, now I'm being exposed to all this Kasumi reference and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow. Just wow. Now I know what people are talking about. Wow, who'd have thunk it? So overall, I surprisingly really loved it, Persona 5 Royal. Like, I knew that I would like it to some extent, but I was not expecting myself to be invested with this game. I was not expecting myself to be as glued into Persona 5 Royal as I was with this. I was not expecting myself to be so invested with it. I did not expect myself to be like, oh, I want to see what else I can do. I want to see how far I can get into it and stuff like that, you know? I wasn't expecting myself to being hooked onto it, from the gameplay with the baton pass and all the Showtime abilities and stuff, to being able to interact with the story, to bond with the different confidants and stuff. I wasn't expecting myself to be so invested with this game. I wasn't expecting myself. And so while yes, it did take me 120 hours to beat, but I was able to beat it literally before the end of the month. Like, I invested so much time on Persona 5 Royal that a lot of people that knew what Persona 5 was, and they were talking to me and stuff, and they found out that I had beaten it, they were like, dude, how on the earth did you have the time to beat it? I just do! I just have the ability to make time to beat these games. Would I recommend this to any other RPG fanatic? Most definitely. I would definitely give it a highly recommendation, especially if you are a Shin Megami Tensei fan, or a Persona fan, or an RPG fan in general. Like, I have to admit, when people talk about RPG that they would recommend, I am surprised as to how many times it gets referenced. I know the Happy Console video game, Johnny, I can't believe I can't say his actual YouTube channel name, the Happy Console Gamer, there we go. He recommended this at one point. There were several other gamers that would recommend this on the site as well, and I'm like, is it really that good though? Like, is it? And I start playing it and I'm like, no, they undertone it. It is that good. I hate to give it an instant 5, because I know people have like this inherent fear of like, oh, you're just giving it a 5 just as a staple. No. You know my rating system. My rating system is based on how highly would I recommend this game. And given to the audience that is geared towards and stuff like that, I would definitely give this a 5 because it is that good of a game. Does it have some problems? Not as often as you would think. Some of those problems are easily quickly redeemable depending on how you play through the game. And it's a matter of being knowledgeable of the game, you know? It's okay to look into the game and realizing you screwed up somewhere, because then you can turn around and perfect it, you know? It's not too late to fix the situation that you're in and stuff like that. And again, I love the setup, I love the story, and the color tone, the graphic and everything like that of the game looks really good. Like, overall, I wish that the development of this game would match how Shin Megami Tensei 5 would have looked it. Like, it looks good, but is it better than Persona 5? Instantly, no. And I'm not saying for the date sims or whatever like that. No, there are other elements that could have been brought from Persona 5 and could have perfected SMT 5 better. I feel like Persona 5 did better in so many areas, despite the fact that it came out first before Shin Megami Tensei 5 did, which is a shock. Also, side note, I somehow was able to get both Royal and the Vanilla steelbook cases. Like, I got their steelbooks and everything like that. This one I was able just to find inside the store for cheap, and then this one was given to by my friend, a friend of mine. So I got both of them in steelbook form, and I absolutely love that. But now that I've played Persona 5 and I've enjoyed it, I'm glad that I actually have both steelbook cases, because they are good games. In my personal opinion, Persona 5 is really good. Now I just gotta play through Striker and see how that turns out, because I've heard people say that Striker is really good, despite the fact that it's a Dynasty Warrior with Shin Megami Tensei mixed into it. So I definitely want to play that and see how that is. So anyway, guys, let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on Shin Megami Tensei? What are your thoughts on Persona 5 Royal or Persona 5 and Genuine? Have you played one or the other, or have you played both of them? What are your thoughts and opinions? Are they about the same as mine? Do you think that Persona 5 does really, really well and it's really, really that good, or do you feel indifferent about it and you feel like it's overrated? It's very possible. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. This is BlackCross signing off. Catch you guys later.
Finally, Kamoshida himself. Everyone, let's do this.
Go down.
You dare strike me!
Get ready. Eat this.
Persona!